Hey everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions and welcome back to another edition of the Night Ranger Deep Dive to go along with my Night Ranger book, Sing Me Away, the Night Ranger album review, where we go through each of the studio albums. And with me is a gentleman who has contributed to several of the chapters, and I think that includes the album we're going to talk about. Did I? Or
Yep.
no, maybe I didn't. Yes,
Yeah,
you
I'm in
did.
there,
Yeah,
Tim.
you're in this one.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Should have just asked. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is the first time that he's been on my show, but I've been on his show from Slogans Rocket Metal Extravaganza. One half of the dynamic duo, Mr. Logan Collins. Hello, sir.
Hey, Tim. I'm really excited to do this, man, and I'm thankful for you to let me be on the in the book and on the show and everything. So,
Awesome. Yeah, it's your input is very much appreciated, and I really like the fact that you've got the album cover
behind me.
we're going to be talking about. Yeah, we're on this episode. This is going to be a lot of fun because we're talking about the black sheep of the Night Ranger catalog, the outlier, the album that dare not speak its name, Feeding Off the Mojo from 1995. This is the one album to feature the three-piece lineup of Gary Moon on bass and vocals, and of course Brad Gillis and Kelly Kagi. Of course, this came out at the time when Jack Blades was Damn Yankees really wasn't going at this point in 1995. He had done
Yep.
the first of the two Shaw Blades albums, so I guess it was half Damn Yankees. Actually, if I recall correctly, it was three quarters because I think Michael Cardellone played drums on that Hallucination album. But anyway, uh, so that left Brad Gillis and Kelly Kagi with, I guess, the rights to the Night Ranger name, and as early as 1992, I can remember reading in Metal Edge magazine that there was a Night Ranger reunion of sorts with a new bassist and vocalist, and that they were working on demos and trying to get a record deal. And I guess I kind of forgot about that until about 3 years later. And again, it was in Metal Edge. Thank God for Metal Edge, because this was pre. I didn't quite have a lot of internet access at the time, uh, but there was a new Night Ranger album, and I went to a local, semi-local store and found this, Feeding Off the Mojo. Now, let's get the negative stuff out of the way. They used the squished logo again. That's when they take the logo and put it in a vise. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I like this
Pretty.
cover. I do
Yeah, it's
like this
cool.
cover. I'd love to
Cool,
see it on
cool album cover.
vinyl. Yeah, I'd love to
Yep.
see it on vinyl for the first time. We get to see what the Night Ranger looks
The
like.
Night Ranger.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, Now let me see who designed this artwork. Creative direction, Stephen Powers. Photography by Jeffrey. Illustrations by Sean McManus. So I guess I thought at first, but maybe subconsciously, I'm thinking AC/DC Ballbreaker from the same year because that was Marvel Comics. But this is kind of comic book-ish art.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so right away, this doesn't look like any Night Ranger album cover that you've seen
No.
before.
No.
And so this is a very, very Karabi. Oh, did I freeze up? No.
Yeah, I think a little bit.
Okay. So I
We're
subconsciously
back
always
now. We're back now.
I've always compared this album subconsciously to the 1994 Motley Crue album, the self-titled one with Sean Karabi, because I think that's
Yeah.
a really, really good album, but it
Hmm.
doesn't sound like Motley Crue because you've got
Same.
such a different vocalist. This
Same thing with
is
this one, right?
Well, this is somewhere in between
Yeah.
because you've got two vocalists in this band. So Gary Moon does not sound anything like Jack Blades. Gary's got a really high, raspy voice. Sometimes he reminds me of Tom Kiefer from Cinderella.
I know.
Sometimes
I mentioned Glenn Hughes too a little bit,
little Glenn
and Axl
Hughes,
Rose. Axl
yeah,
Rose,
little
kind of a
Axl
little bit.
Rose. And to keep
Yeah,
it Canadian, because I'm Canadian, sometimes he reminds me of the late Jerry McGee from Brighton Rock,
nice.
which that's a little more obscure, but sometimes he really sounds like Jerry. But Gary had been kicking around for quite a long time. At one point, he was in the band Three Dog Night, not originally, obviously, but a version of it. And he
Yeah,
had also played on at least one album by a guy named Jeff Paris, which is a name a lot of you will recognize. He's a fairly well-known songwriter, but he also had his own albums. And actually, the I think it's called Race. Is it called Race to Paradise? He had a couple albums on Mercury in the late '80s, and not only was Gary Moon on it, but Matt Sorum was the drummer on one of them. So
Nice.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
go down a lot of these rabbit holes. Now, how he ended up in Night Ranger, I'm not really sure. I never did know that story, but
Yeah.
they started doing some gigs, and I think they had to bring in a keyboard player, obviously. But they're pictured as a trio on here, and this is a very very guitar centric album,
Yeah.
and some Night Ranger fans don't pay any attention to it. Some don't like it at all. Some like some of it. I actually quite like this album, and I think you're more or less in the same camp as me. I
Yep.
I was so glad. I got to tell you, in early '96 when I first bought this, because I was not a grunge guy, I was not an alt rock guy. I was so glad that there was some new melodic rock to listen to, and I listened to this album quite a lot. Now that doesn't mean I wasn't more excited when Neverland came out and the original Night Ranger came back, but I look back on this and like I'm glad that there's this quirky little album that's out there. It's kind of like not quite the same, but it's kind of like Poison having uh, Native Tongue and Crack a Smile without CC, because I love CC, but I
Right.
like the fact they had these two albums with other guitar players. It's just
Yeah.
interesting hearing what these guys sounded like in different configurations. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So Logan and I are going to
Yeah.
go through this album track by track. The album was it came out on a very small label, Drive Entertainment. This is the only album I have, and it's the only album I've ever heard of on this label. It will
Yeah.
probably never be issued on vinyl. I've actually did manage to track down a sealed cassette tape, which isn't
Awesome, man.
but mostly what you're going to find are used CD versions of it, which is
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of a shame. But that just kind of shows you, how out of vogue this type of music was in the mid '90s.
Well,
Unless
something good about what you're doing here. I mean, I didn't know anything about this album until like you brought it up on a Contrarian show
Well,
one
here's the
time.
thing. You wouldn't know about it because Night
Yep.
Ranger don't even acknowledge it because
Right.
their album Seven is actually their eighth album.
Yeah.
Um, and the odd thing is that very similar Toto, their album, the seventh one, that's actually their eighth album if you count the Dune soundtrack, but they don't.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just one of those things, and I kind of get it. It is an outlier, but what can I say? I like it. A good melodic rock album by any other name is still a good melodic rock album. So let's
100%.
let's start off with the opening track. I guess it could like the quasi title track. It's just called
Yeah.
Mojo, but the chorus is feeding off the mojo. Right
Yeah.
away, as soon as the effects come on and everything, doesn't sound anything like Night Ranger, but
No. Yeah. It's got a different kind of feel completely right off the bat.
totally different. And then
Yep.
Gary's vocals take it to another place as well. But it's
Yep.
catchy, it's funky, it's got a really cool groove.
I
It's
love
kind of
that. I love that guitar line that Gary sings off of Brad. At the
yeah,
start.
the
That's pretty
yeah,
cool too.
he kind of mirrors the guitar riff, and
Yep.
yeah, it's cool. It's a cool little song, and it's different than
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting from this album, but that was not it. But I was like,
It
okay, yeah, yeah, I
it's
like this.
definitely a breath of fresh air for this band, really, coming off a Man in Motion, you know what I mean? Because it's
Well, I
like
mean, that's the other thing. It's 7 long years. It's been a long
yeah,
time, and we're just
yep,
missing, and Brad's guitar, good as ever, and yeah. The album was produced by
yeah,
David Prater, who at the
mhm,
time was probably best known for working with Firehouse, but he also produced Dream
yeah,
Theater's Images and Words. This
mhm,
album kind of sounds somewhere in between production-wise. It doesn't
yeah.
probably leans closer to the Firehouse than it does for DT,
I
but
think I think I remember writing down it has kind of like a live feel to it a little bit, It sounds like
kind of
more
does.
one take kind of thing.
But
Maybe it
for
has something to do with the three-piece lineup and kind of things like that.
but for an independently produced and released album, it sounds good. Like
Oh
it's a
yeah,
it's a good sound. And I
yeah,
do also want to mention like this Drive Entertainment. It says executive producer Don Grierson on the back here. Now Don Grierson used to be with Capitol Records, and I know he was. I don't know if he was an A&R guy, but I know he was, among other things, largely responsible for Heart's comeback. in the mid 80s.
Nice.
So he may have started his own label hoping that it would get a major distributor. Like the look of the CD itself too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I've only ever seen this. I've never seen any variants of this. I don't know. The Japanese
Yeah,
one
it'd be
probably
cool
looks
if there was
different,
like
but
different colored ones or something, you know.
yeah, like from
But I like
around the
it. It's kind of
world.
like inverted from the actual cover.
A little bit, yeah. It's like a colored negative.
Yeah.
Next song I think is a song that, back when radio was friendly towards this type of music could have been a hit. Last Chance. I think this
Yeah.
is a really, really strong song. Again, it's Gary singing. Now, this one was actually co-written with Jeff Paris.
Yeah.
And Jeff Paris, if you're a Y&T fan, he co-wrote all the lyrics on In Rock We Trust. He also wrote the song Let It Out from the 10 album. He wrote the song Lucky This Time from Mr. Big's Lean Into It album. His One of the bigger hits he had was the song "Crying" that Vixen did. So
Yeah.
he's been out there writing songs with people. And sometimes he uses his actual name, which is Jeffrey Lieb. So it's the same guy, Jeff Paris.
Cool.
I didn't
Um
know that. I don't think I knew that until I saw the Y&T documentary. I was like, oh, Jeffrey Lieb and Jeff Paris are the same guy.
Yeah, I
Okay,
remember us talking about that.
got
I didn't
it,
know. Yeah, he
got
did
it.
all that work for Y&T and T and stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah, I really like that track. It's got like a dynamic build up to the chorus. I think Gary Moon really shows his vocal talents off nicely on this track. And
it's
Gary
great.
probably sings. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe like 65% of the record, seventy
Well, let's see.
percent.
One, two, three,
It's quite a bit.
uh, four,
Because like
five.
yeah, a
Um,
couple of
yeah,
them they
I would
kind of
say
do half. You know.
he sings 5 songs, just him
Hmm.
of the 10, and
Yeah.
then there's 2 songs where he sings co-lead vocals. So he does sing the
Yeah.
majority of the songs, which is,
Yeah. And I like
so
how they these first three songs in a row, they kind of just gave it all to
they're
Gary, you know.
trying, yeah,
That was
that
really
was
bold of them to do
that
that.
was a bold move. Yeah, absolutely, because yeah, it's so different sounding. But Last Chance is
Yep.
super catchy. The beginning of it, where it's just Brad doing this sort of single string guitar lines.
Yeah.
Less than a year later, Journey comes out with Trial by Fire, and there's a song on that album called One More that starts off almost exactly the same, like down,
Yep.
down,
Yep.
down,
I
down.
remember
And it's
because you
like,
had that in there. I listened to that and I'm like, yeah. I wonder if they kind of took inspiration from that or
well, I mean, Brad and Neil Sean, they'd be Bay Area guys.
yeah,
They're
they're
both on,
contemporaries.
they were both on Hearing Aid. But yeah, it's just interesting. But it's a great song. Love the changes in it, and
Yeah.
Brad does like a great, Brad Gillis. He
And I
does a great
really, I mean,
solo.
if it would have came out a couple years earlier, probably would have been
Yeah,
could have been a big tune.
it could have been a big rock hit, a big radio hit. Next
Yep.
up is not one of my favorite songs in the album. It's okay. Try
Yeah.
for Good Reason, and it's that title has a lot to do with it. It's kind of an awkward
Yeah.
title.
Awkward title. Yep.
Try for Good Reason in brackets, and it kind of sings awkward too. And I'm real
Yeah.
bad for that. I'll get stuck on like that sounds awkward, where most people are like I like it. I'm like okay, but it's
I do think the highlight of this song is probably Kelly, his
uh,
drumming. It's
Kelly.
all
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean Kelly is when someone does 2 things, like sings and plays drums, what usually happens is they never get mentioned as being really exceptional in any of the fields. But yeah,
Yep.
Kelly really, really plays some cool stuff on this as a drummer. It's a shuffle, so he
Yeah,
gets to do
going
some.
offbeat and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no. So it's got a lot of merit. This song. Now, next
And
up, if you were, like, I remember when I first heard this, I was going along with it, thinking, okay, I'm liking this, but I'm not, and I'm looking at the logo on the cover, and I'm like, doesn't sound like Night Ranger to me. And then Precious Time comes on,
there he is.
and there's Kelly not having aged a day, and
Oh man.
I think Precious Time is just a quintessential
That's
Night Ranger
that's a
ballad.
that's another one, Tim, man. If it would have came out a little
Yeah,
bit earlier, it should have been huge.
but
I
like
mean it's
people that dismiss this album because Jack's not on it and they're Night Ranger fans, I'm like, you got to at least listen to Precious Time. That's
yeah,
just a
yeah,
good, I mean, you might say, and if you like Kelly's solo album, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this song. And
yep,
it's got some really cool guitar in it
yep.
from Brad. He's got some really cool like layers happening. And I
Yeah.
mentioned this in the book that there's the part of that riff that he does where it's kind of repeated. It reminds me a little bit of part of what Brian May plays in Queen's The Prophet song. Just that
Yeah.
sort of jangling,
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
It totally got a Queen vibe to it. Yeah.
yeah, which you might think, how is that going to work? It works. It works great, you know?
I love the harmony vocals too in the
Yeah.
chorus. I mean, it's just
Yeah, Gary and
oh,
Kelly sound good together,
and
and
and that's the one that's kind of about life on the road, right? I mean, that's kind of a
it's a recurrent theme, and it's,
yeah.
but yeah, another song that, this could have been a radio single back in the day, and and
Mhm.
and radio would have picked up on it because it's that familiar voice singing the Night Ranger ballad, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
100%.
it's it's a shame this album remains like it's like a treasure for the few. Like, even though, like, I lament the fact, and one of the main reasons I wanted to do a book on them is like their newest albums are so good and so consistent.
Oh, yeah.
So many people
100%.
don't even know they exist.
No.
But this one really is obscure because it
I know that
doesn't.
was a big point between me and you when you asked me to do the book, I asked to do some of the newer albums because
Yeah,
they're still pumping out great
they're
content,
still making great music, but right
great
in the sort of
material.
the middle of their career, this oddball
Yeah.
album comes out, and I'm
This little outlier, yeah.
so glad for it. So next up is "The Night Has a Way," which is sort of a mid-tempo
Oh, yeah.
rock song. This one
Yeah.
is interesting because this was not written by anyone in the band. It was written by David Tyson and Christopher Ward, who are
Yeah.
Canadian songwriters, and probably the best-known composition they ever wrote was a song called "Black Velvet." Which
Oh, yeah.
Atlanta Miles
Lot
had a
Land of
number
Miles.
number one hit with
Yeah.
that on both sides of the border in the early, like late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah.
And Christopher Ward was actually one of the original VJs on Much Music, which was Canada's MTV.
Wow.
So grew up, seeing him introduce videos. But they've written a lot of songs for a lot of people. So what's interesting
Yeah.
about this, from a guy in Canada that works in radio, if I had the leeway and had my own show, if I played "The Night Has a Way," it would count as Canadian content because
Yeah.
the music and lyrics are 100% Canadian. And
Yeah.
I totally would. And I think it's a
And
good
then
song. It doesn't necessarily, I don't think I listened to it a few times before I really started to dig through the credits. It didn't stand out to me, so I didn't realize it wasn't a song that, like, say, Brad and
yeah,
Kelly had a hand in writing,
hit
because
it on the head right there,
it
man. Yeah, I was
sounds
thinking the
like
same.
this could have been
Yeah.
off Big Life or something.
Yes, 100%. It's one of my favorites on the album, man. I love
It's
that song.
really good.
Love
Yeah.
the chorus. Love
Yeah.
the chorus. Just
Super catchy. Um,
great, like kind of theme that anybody could relate to about relationships and
yeah.
that kind of thing.
Next we have, I think, an unnecessary medley of cover songs. And
Yeah,
I'm
right in the
guessing
middle too.
And I'm guessing there was some record company pressure. So those of you that are keeping count, this would be the first song on side two. Do you feel like I do, or we do, or I've seen it printed a million different ways, and Tomorrow I Never Knows. So it's a mashup of Peter Frampton and the Beatles. This is mostly the Peter Frampton song with a little bit of
Yeah, they
Tomorrow I
do
Never
like a
Knows in
little
there.
bit of
Yeah.
Tomorrow Never Knows. Yeah.
Um, I mean, it sounds okay. I've never been the biggest fan of the Frampton song.
Yeah,
Um,
same here,
but
Tim. I
it's
wrote down the
okay.
same
But it's
thing.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling that it was done so a radio station might say, "Oh, okay. Well, we know these songs. We're not afraid to play songs that people know." So,
Yeah.
I would have rather heard, because I know there are other songs.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
someone mentioned in the book. Somebody mentions a song called "Love Ain't Pretty." There was a song called "Wrong Again." And
Yeah.
there are other songs that were demoed. I would love to hear them, and
Yeah.
I would have
Or throw them out there.
I
Yeah.
would have much rather heard a song like that than them putting a bunch of classic rock covers together. But hey, next
Yep.
up is probably my favorite song in the album, though.
Oh, yeah.
I would call this the centerpiece of the album, Music Box. Now, I'm going
Yep.
to say right off the bat, I'm a huge Winger fan. Love Winger. I get total Winger vibes from this song. This could have been off of Pull. This could have been off of
Yeah.
any of their latter day albums. Gary even sounds a little bit like Kip in his highest register, but this is just a really cool. It's kind of a ballad, but it's not really. It's
Yeah. It keeps changing.
it's
It changes constantly.
to bring the Winger comparison back into it. If you're going to compare it to one of their sort of slower songs, it's a little bit like "Spell I'm Under" from Pull. Like,
Yeah.
it's a ballad, but it's not miles away. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a heavy ballad,
Yeah.
and
I love the vocals too. Gary
yeah,
just kills it
Gary
on that song.
really shines on this. And my
Especially before it goes into the solo, Oh
I've
man. That's his
always loved
magic.
that. That was one part I would I would start the song again just to get it to that part. Because right before the
Yeah.
solo begins, he hits this high note, and then Brad matches the high note,
Yeah.
and the production is seamless. It almost, you can't really tell where the vocal ends and the guitar begins,
Yeah,
and
I love that, man.
it's just a really cool song. And then Brad mimics part of the chorus melody before the final chorus comes back in. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's a small J, like it's an epic of a song. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, it's. Does it
The
sound like
only the,
does it sound like Night Ranger? No, but it's
the,
good. It's
the only
really
bad thing
good.
about it is it fades out.
It fades out. Yeah. Yeah. You'd kind of think that it might end the way it began and just kind of
Right?
go
Yeah.
back into that. Because I love the little intro that Brad plays that has nothing to do with the rest of the song. That little
Yeah.
down, down, down,
Yeah.
down. But on the other hand, I do like how it fades up because it goes into some different chords. So
Oh yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
really, really good.
Very unique
Next
song. Yeah.
Next one, it's okay. Longest Days. It's really
Yeah.
heavy once it kicks in.
Yeah. Gary must have had a bad day when he wrote this one. If he wrote it.
He's having one. He's having one today. No, I like it. This song reminds me of Slaughter.
Yeah.
This has always reminded me of Slaughter. Um, but it's good. It's just, it's like I wasn't expecting this. You know what I mean?
Kind of has a country kind of feel to it a little bit, with the
It does until it kicks in, and then it's like it's
yeah,
drop
yeah,
D tuning, and you're like, whoa,
yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah,
um, And then we get another ballad. Now, some people like this one, some people don't. I think it's quite good. Tell me I'm wrong. Now,
yeah.
this one is kind of I'm gonna say it's in waltz time, so it's kind of
Hmm.
like an Aerosmith type of like crazy or like one of those
Yeah,
types of songs. But this one has Gary singing the verse, then Kelly comes in on the bridge. Love that part, and they
yeah,
sound really good together on the chorus. And
yeah.
this,
Makes me wish they would have did that a little bit more on this
yeah,
record.
this is the one when like Gary saying hide all your feelings away. That's when he really reminds me of Tom Kiefer.
Oh yeah,
He sounds a
yeah,
lot like Tom Kiefer there, but I think
yeah.
it's
He's
a
got
good,
that grit to his vocal.
yeah,
Yeah,
really good song. And then it ends on it's kind of a weird note. So far gone. Um, this is another one. This one I kind of equate with Longest Days because it starts off sort of mellow and then it gets heavy. This
yeah.
one's faster. This one's a pretty fast song.
I
Uh,
remember I compared it to the last song on Man in Motion. I kind of did a little bit of Woman in
a
Love,
little
because it
bit,
changes.
yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah. Now, my complaint about this song has always been when Kelly comes in on the chorus, his vocals are buried way back in the mix.
yeah.
Like that seems to me like one of those things where I always wonder about things like that. I know this was probably done on a shoestring budget because he didn't have a major label behind them, but you'd
Right.
think
Yeah,
somebody would have caught that in the way. I said, man, I could barely
yeah.
hear him underneath
Turn him up a
everything
little bit.
else. Um, it's all right, but I mean, so to me, this is at least 75-80% a really strong album. Now,
Yeah, it might meander a little bit towards the end, but yeah,
yeah,
everything from the start to about Music Box is pretty
and
solid.
if you're a Night Ranger fan and you've never wanted to go near this album or check it out, I would at least say, at least go on YouTube and find Precious Time and The Night
Oh,
Has a Way, because those are Kelly
100%. Yeah,
songs and those sound
yeah,
like Night Ranger to me.
yep.
I don't even think this album's available digitally. I mean, it's like it doesn't
Yeah, I don't
it
think it
barely
is.
it's been
No.
erased. You know what I mean? So, which
Yeah.
is another reason there's no way I was going to not talk about this album because it's such a pivotal part of their
Yeah.
career. Because
Well, it's like the bridge between the first era and
yeah,
the
I mean,
reunited era.
Jack did his thing, they did their thing, and
Yeah.
you know, uh, there it is, it's an overlooked album, and I think that they have. Unfortunately, this band has a lot of overlooked albums. This one might be the most overlooked. So
Yeah,
there
I'd
you
say
go.
so.
That's uh, that's our take on feeding off the mojo.
With the Night
I
Ranger on the
with
cover.
the Night Rangers. Now, some people affectionately refer to this band as Moon Ranger. So
Yep.
kind of works. So so there you go. That's what Logan and I think of it. If you want to find out more about every Night Ranger album, I'll have the link to this below. Sing Me Away, the Night Ranger album review. This is a substantial read. This is
Oh yeah.
the most pages of any book I've done. So I've got a lot of people with a lot of things to say about Night Ranger. We're all big fans of all the different eras, and we all have our preferences. But this is a fun one to talk about because this is one that almost nobody talks about. So
Yeah,
I think it's
exactly. Yeah.
important to keep these outlier albums alive and remind people, it's there. Again, shame about that squished logo. Um, so Logan, thanks for doing this, and again, thank you for taking part in the book. And
Thanks for having me on, Tim. I
yeah,
appreciate it, man.
I've been on with Logan and Sydney before. They have some great content. I'll have a link to their channel. Definitely check it out. And we're going to keep on rolling with the Night Ranger deep dive. I've got a very, very special episode coming up. We've actually got a returning co-host and then someone that's never been on before. And you're not going to want to miss this, guys. This is if you're a Night Ranger fan and you've ever had to travel to go see one of their gigs, this is one for you. We're also talking about an album too, but stay tuned for that. So Logan, thanks for talking to me about feeding off the mojo, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
keep doing the great stuff with your channel, and
Yeah. Thanks, man.
try to
Thanks
keep
for
this
having me
stuff.
on.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for being on. See you, everybody. See you all later, and I highly recommend that you all feed off the mojo at least once. See you later.